So it is a high-stakes week ahead for President Trump, with behind-the-scenes maneuvering on health care and a face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit. So how will he stay on message? Let's get the bottom line with David Drucker. He's our CNN political analyst and senior congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. David, great to see you again. Okay, let's talk about where we are with health care first. So the Senate bill that was scored by the CBO that Senator Dean Heller of Nevada says he won't vote for, where are we with that? Are they still tweaking it or going back to the drawing board or what?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I mean, I think they're trying to look for ways in which they can bring both conservatives and moderates along, satisfy a lot of the concerns about the Medicaid expansion. Some people want more money to fight opioid abuse, and obviously you have the conservatives on the right that want a more aggressive repeal of the Obamacare regulatory regime, believing that's what is required to reduce premiums and deductibles. So I think that they're spending the week exploring all of their options. Allison, I'd expect these negotiations and this effort to extend for most of the month of July. I don't expect any major breakthroughs next week, but that doesn't mean that all is lost.
Look, there's stuff happening behind the scenes, among the leadership perhaps, but it's right out in the open for a lot of these senators who are home this week holding town meetings. And we've seen video, Bill Cassidy and others just getting hammered at these meetings. Can these senators stand up to the pressure that they're really getting from both sides?
Well, I think that they're in a bind because on the one hand, they have pressure from the right to repeal Obamacare. That is part of the pressure, whether we're seeing it or not, it exists. On the other side, we have a very troubled healthcare system, and regardless of who Republicans and Democrats want to blame, the truth is healthcare needs fixing, and Republicans are in a bind because either they fix current law, which is politically untenable with their base, or they propose something new to solve the problems of access and pricing and all of that. And so they're in this position, John, where they have to do something, and I think that's part of the pressure that's going to get them to a final solution. They will get beat up all along the way because there's so much opposition to the bill and because liberals are so energized, but they don't really have any solace on the right, who's not going to be forgiving if they don't get something done.
So President Trump is going to be having these G20 meetings with world leaders. He is going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin for the first time. I mean, after all of this talk, for all of these months about their relationship, which basically is non-existent, and they will be meeting face to face for the first time. So to be a fly on the wall, what do we expect?
The anticipation is killing me. This is a really, really interesting meeting because Donald Trump has treated Putin with kid gloves, even as he has beaten up our allies left and right. And on top of that, we have something to go on here. I mean, President Obama, a Democrat, tried to reset relations with Vladimir Putin. It failed. President George W. Bush thought that he looked into Putin's eyes and saw his soul and that he was a good guy. That failed. And so you think by now that maybe people who live in the White House would learn something about dealing with Vladimir Putin. But it's possible that Trump could surprise us. He's shown at times an ability to act rather conventional. He did that on his Middle Eastern trip. And so maybe he gets into a room and he says, what you're doing in Ukraine is a no-go, and you got to start calming down in Syria. But I don't know if that's what we should expect based on how he has talked about Russia and the way he seems to have his own ideas about a Russian Reset 3. But this is probably the biggest news of the week because Russia continues to be our biggest geopolitical adversary on the world stage at the moment.
Look, and there was all kinds of preparation for the Middle Eastern trip and then the trip to Europe, which was, not quite as, controversy-free as the Middle Eastern trip. And we don't know if there's quite as much preparation for this, so we will have to wait and see. And one of the questions is, David, can the White House, can the president stay on message this week? And I suppose the sub-question to that is, what is the message this week? Because as we're entering the week, it really just seems to be attacking the media. That can't be the message he's taking with him to Europe.
Yeah, but I bet him and Vladimir Putin will have a good laugh over that because they both like to attack the media.
Well, look, you joke, but the fact that there's any similarity there is deeply disturbing, right? Because Vladimir Putin goes after members of the media completely.
If I don't joke, maybe I'll cry.
Right.
I think you raised some very good points, but I think the question here is Donald Trump, is this president going to sort of stand up for the West that we have led since the World War II period and throughout the Cold War and the post-Cold War period? and defend NATO, defend Western Europe against, in a sense, Russia's attempt to undermine it? Or is he going to try and forge a deal with Vladimir Putin that, in a sense, loosens all of that? And I think these are the big questions here. And part of that will depend on Trump's real view of Putin, whether they're able to sort of form some sort of relationship of any sort, and what the president's ultimate goal here is. And they've been very quiet about that. We don't know that,
Right.
and that would tell us a lot more about what we can expect.
All right, stay tuned. It is Independence Day Eve. Go hang your stockings. David Drucker, thanks so much for being with us. The good stuff
Thank you.
is next.